Happy Mother's Day and welcome to church. Today, Pastor Bev is continuing our series, Thriving in Edmonton, where he'll be talking about how we all need community and connection and how that happens best in small groups. If you're new here, we'd love to connect. You can message us on Facebook, Instagram, or by simply texting hello to 587-323-1199, and we'll respond right back. I'm so glad that you could join us today.
God wants to change the world through all of us with the talents and abilities that you have. And this means being bold and courageous. So it's time to work hard. It's time to go back to our mission of making disciples who make disciples. And it's time to see God's glory and God's peace poured out on our friends and our neighbors and our co-workers and on our city like never before. It's time to thrive in Edmonton. 'Cause there's no limit to love, no volunteer ocean, no top tier mountain, no end to sky. There's no limit to love, no volunteer ocean, no top tier mountain, no end to sky.
Well, good morning. I'm Pastor Bev Sessink. We want to say thank you for each and every one of you joining us here and online. Again, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that are viewing. We just want to let you know that we do appreciate all that you do and the difference you have made in our lives. If you're new to our church, we'd love to connect with you, however that might be, in person, by text, email, whatever. We just want to again say welcome in joining us today. This morning, we continue our series, Thriving in Edmonton, with a focus on thriving in community. And I believe it can be best summed up in one phrase: community is done best in small groups. I'd like you to say that with me here and online as well. Community is best done in small groups. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but this past week was Mental Health Awareness Week in Canada. And so I wanted to begin with a question for you today. How well are you thriving? How well are you doing, really? To find out, I would ask you to join with me in a simple wellness questionnaire. This wellness questionnaire or survey, I want to ask you a question. How are you presently doing in the midst of COVID-19? Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being horrible and 10 being great, how well are you doing physically? Keep that number in mind. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you doing emotionally? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you doing spiritually? Add those 3 numbers up. Got that? This will be your general score. If you've scored from 1 to 10, it's like a flashing red light. It's time to ask for help. And at Calvary Community Church, we are here to help, a listening ear, to provide you resources, to direct you to resources, to hopefully help you to navigate through these challenging times. If you scored yourself 11 to 20, it's like a flashing yellow light. It's time to be cautious and to be aware that not everything is odd as it should be, and you most likely need to ask for help, whether it would be physically, emotionally, or spiritually. And again, we're here to help, to be a listening ear, to provide resources or to direct you to resources, to assist you as we need to navigate through these challenging times. And if you've scored 21 to 30, it's like a flashing green light. Everything may seem fine, and perhaps it is, but it is still a time to be careful as you navigate life. Now, that being said, even if you are doing well, nonetheless, we are here to help, to be a listening ear, to provide you with resources, to direct you to resources, to hopefully assist you to navigate through this challenging time. And we share this with you because I'm just reminded that in some cultures, if an offer is made once, the person would say no. And if the offer is made twice, they would still say no. But if the offer is made 3 times, then they know that the offer is sincere. So today, if perhaps the first time we made this offer, you went, well, I'm not sure. And the offer was made again. And you went, well, maybe. Well, we've made the offer 3 times that if you in some way are needing help, we are here just for that. And we want you to know that. I also want to warn you that sometimes we see ourselves doing better than we actually are doing. Often we have a tendency to say we are doing better than is reality. For example, when I ask people, how are you doing? Sometimes the answer is almost immediately, good. But when I ask the question, how you are doing, I'm looking at the eyes of the person. I'm looking at their body movement. And sometimes what their eyes or their body or their face is saying is not what is coming out of their mouth. So sometimes I will say, how are you doing really? At times, the person is quiet and will say, well, I'm not really doing as good as I thought. And so we have to be aware that in the midst of the challenges of COVID-19, we may possibly think we're doing okay, but perhaps we're not doing as well as we really are. Now, you may be wondering what this exercise is about, this survey that I've just asked you to do. Well, I believe it has something to do very much with the topic at hand, because Lifeway Research recently did some research and discovered that Americans, and I would assume probably Canadians as well, have concluded that they don't need the church. And listen to this. One of the key reasons that more and more churchgoers are concluding that they don't need each other. Yes, 2/3 of churchgoers, 65% of them said, yes, we can have a relationship with God, but we don't need other believers. Let me say that again. 2/3 of churchgoers say that they can have a relationship with God, but without other believers. That's rather sobering. And while they said that, they also somehow admitted in the survey that they really did need other believers in their lives, but weren't prepared to do what it takes to make that possible. To believe that we can have a relationship with God without others, we are missing out on something essential to our growth as a disciple, as a follower of Jesus. Solo Christianity, that is doing it on our own, is an inward desire to seek spiritual fulfillment without the realization that biblical community is what will fulfill the desire we are seeking. Americans, and I believe Canadians as well, we don't want to easily admit that we need others. Yet it is true and necessary that our relationship with God include others around us who likewise love Him, recognizing that there is a mutual dependence on others as we depend on God as well. Now, in our efforts to make the gospel personal, that is the good news of Jesus Christ, we have shortchanged certain aspects of being together. We frequently use the phrase, which is not found in Scripture, to describe our personal relationship with Jesus. Yet we fail to emphasize the phrases in the Bible that call us to be one and to love one another. Now, it's true that none of us, as a follower of Jesus, can become one of His unless we personally and individually accept His gift of salvation through grace in Jesus Christ. But have we, as the followers of Jesus, grasped that to follow Him means also to do so in community with others? As a society, we are very consumeristic, we're very individualistic, and it's easy for us not to ask for the help of others, because often we can access information on YouTube, or we can ask Siri. I get what I want, when I want it, the way I want it, and then I'm done. And I believe the tendency is also to bring that mindset into the church, where we get things, we get needs met through the church when we need it, and then we're done. And it's easy to miss that God has in mind for all of us to be together in this journey of faith. That is why community is best done in small groups. And would you say that again with me? Community is best done in small groups. Our witness to the world is designed to take place by loving one another, being with one another, working with one another. And the reality is we can only be the church when we're in community. And how a church fosters community has changed. Years ago, churchgoers were at church several times each week. The programs themselves were not the strength of the churches of yesteryear, but the relationships. The relationships were built on seeing each other on Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, plus prayer breakfasts, potlucks, work days, etc. The power of relationships within the church is something that most of us need to rediscover. One of the most effective ways for a local church to foster community is through small groups, meeting regularly, building relationships, praying together, studying and applying the Bible together. That is called discipleship, and it best occurs in the context of small group relationships. That being said, I want to share two foundational scriptural texts as the basis for the rest of the sermon. In Matthew 28, 18-20, it is said, Jesus told his disciples, "Go and make disciples." And doesn't that sound familiar? Isn't that the motto of our church? Making disciples who make disciples. In fact, the basis prior to COVID of our vitalization was to do just that. And then Acts chapter 2, verses 46-47. They worshiped together at the temple each day and met in homes, and each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. Now let's watch this video of one of our small groups that has continued to meet together during this COVID time.
Small groups have been a really important part of our life together. We've been in a small group every year since we've been married, minus 1 year. And small groups in general have just led to a lot of spiritual growth, have encouraged us to keep pursuing the Lord through difficult times, and have been a safe space for us to share what God is doing or what we are personally walking through. Our current small group began about 1.5 years ago, and after we partnered with the young adults ministry here. And after a year of being in no group, we knew that we needed to jump back in. And we really tried to make it work with our busy schedule and having our 4-year-old son. We've always seen the value of being in community and knew that it was really worth it to make it work.
During COVID, we did have to pivot several times, including moving online, as well as splitting the group to be able to meet inside. These were not easy decisions, but I'm very grateful to our group members who were very gracious to accommodate the changes as they came. For us, it was so important that we continue to meet as a group somehow, especially as COVID and restrictions continue to persist. When possible, having people in the backyard and fellowshipping in person. Through the whole year, we have adjusted well, prioritizing prayer, fellowship, followed by a study to deepen our faith and understanding.
When we moved to Edmonton 9.5 years ago, we came completely on our own with no family at all. We almost immediately knew that we wanted to be the people welcoming all of our friends into our little apartment, and it didn't take long for us to start a small group just with any Christian we could find in the city. We have hardly stopped since because we quickly realized the incredible value of being in a small group. Being a part of a small group has given us a great sense of community within the Calvary church body, but even more so as a part of the collective family of God. The connections we've experienced within a small group over the years are almost unmatched, and many of our groups have ended up feeling like family. Our faith has been greatly formed by each group's different way of thinking and the unique life experiences that every member has brought. When you're in a group of people who have experienced the world quite a bit differently than you, you're stretched intellectually and you learn how to develop empathy and compassion and really discovering the heart of Jesus in the process. The heart of a thriving small group, I think, is that of a true, authentic, deep-diving community that encourages one another to bring their questions, their doubts, their fears, and just everything in between. The scriptures clearly teach that we are not meant to do this faith walk alone. We need to commit to the discipline of community. And there really is no better place to do that than that of a small group.
A month ago on Saturday, April the 10th, our church elders, staff, and their spouses met for a day to discuss an important topic that came to light when COVID-19 hit, starting in late January 2020 and beyond. As you may remember, in mid-March last year, the province issued health restrictions not allowing for more than 250 people to meet together, and then shortly thereafter even further restricted that to 15 people gathering together, such as we presently are experiencing. It became abundantly clear at that point that we were facing a new normal and that we would have to go online if we were to continue our Sunday services. And so we did. In the less than a space of a week, we went from a church meeting together in person on Sunday to coming together via social media only. And what we had anticipated would actually take years took less than a week. And while we made that transition, it became obvious that community was going to be hard, was going to be difficult to maintain because we couldn't meet in person. And so in short order, we developed a call-out plan where everyone in our church will be called on a regular basis so as to keep connected. This seemed to have worked for a while, and eventually, after 2 months, we were able to open again for Sunday services, but with various restrictions. And while a number of people did return to in-person Sunday services, quite a number didn't, either opting to be with us online or doing something else. So the question was asked, how do we keep people connected? How do we ensure the well-being of our congregation? Small groups were suggested as the answer, but the reality was that we didn't have all that many small groups active at that time. It was then that we were reminded community is done best in small groups. And would you say that with me? Community is done best in small groups. Now, in the past, we've had significant numbers of people participating in small groups. We had about 30 small groups during our purpose-driven campaign of a number of years ago. And more recently, the Story, Sermon, and Small Group series had 17 groups, but this had dwindled down significantly prior to COVID-19. And so the situation we found ourselves in was having a church with a small group ministry, but not having an equal focus on both our Sunday services and our small group weekly activities. And then during this time, we heard of Heartland Alliance Church, a church in Sherwood Park that had decided not to reopen their weekend services, but rather focused online and with their small groups. And we discovered something that we had never, ever heard of before. That church had more people participating in their small groups during the week than they actually had people participating on Sunday morning at their services. Now, this was quite a shock to us because we had never heard of a church that actually had more people who belonged to that church that were part of a small group than actually turned up on the weekend services. And so we inquired, how is this possible? It was then that we were made aware of an approach which will be called a two-wing church. A church with equal focus on their Sunday or weekend gatherings and also on their weekday small group participation. And so as a result of conversations, we came to the realization that if we were to have effective congregational care, if we were going to have purposeful community and connection for everyone in our congregation, we were going to have to move to a different model than we had been using up till now. And so we invited Pastors Barry Regier and Mike Schellenberg of Heartland Alliance to spend a Sunday with us, with our elders, staff, and spouses, explaining their church's journey to a church of small groups and how we at Calvary Community Church might be able to make that transition over time. And that is why today we're talking about thriving in community, and in particular, thriving as Calvary Community Church through community in small groups. Now you may be saying to yourself, I don't really get it. What is the difference with a church of small groups and a church of small groups? But before I answer that question, let's watch this video about another one of our small groups that has thrived during COVID-19.
I'm Byron Martins. This is my wife, Angela. We joined a small group about 2.5 years ago. The group started off as a fairly large group made of several young families. There's a few transitions in the first year. By the beginning of the last year, we settled into a small group of about 4 families. We met weekly, shared a meal together, and in the evening, the kids would go downstairs or outside, and the parents would do a Bible study and pray together.
When COVID hit last March, we were unable to meet in person, and we had to make some adjustments. We switched to meeting on Zoom and moved the meeting time to after the kids' bedtime. As weather and restrictions permitted, we were able to get together a few times over the summer last year. outside at playgrounds just so the kids could have some fun playing together.
The group is still going and continues to meet together online with Zoom each week. We make use of Right Now Media for the Bible studies, and in this way we've been able to remain in community with each other, have discussions on the material, and spend time praying together. Meeting a couple of hours every week has allowed us to share meaningfully in the joys and challenges of life, reminding us that we are not alone, and helping us to stay focused on God's Word and His truth. It's exciting to hear how God has been working in each person's life and to share encouragement and to pray for one another when we face struggles.
Being in a small group has allowed us to reach out with God's love to our city in a way that we couldn't have done just on our own. For example, in December, our group made 100 Christmas cards for the staff of a nearby retirement home, with adults writing messages of encouragements, and the kids were adding pictures that they had colored. We also raised enough money to include a $10 Timmy's card into each envelope.
We have found it is especially important at this time to be intentional in staying in community with each other, supporting each other and praying together. Even though it can be a little awkward at first, community and relationships are an essential part of our walk with God. God designed us to live in community, and when we're doing life on our own, more isolated from one another, it is easier to get discouraged and to even start losing sight of God and our purpose in life. Being intentional to get connected and be in community, even if it is virtually at this particular season of time, is as important as ever and can be a lifeline of strength, thriving, and support. The format may look different at this time, but no matter whether we have met in person or virtually, we have been blessed by our involvement in a small group and encourage others to get connected into a small group as well.
So what's the difference between a church with small groups and a church of small groups? Let me explain. On a baseball team of 9 players, how many players are active most of the time? Usually 2, the pitcher and the catcher, and if the ball gets hit, another player or 2 may be involved, but generally only 2 out of 9 on the field are active for most of the game. Now compare that to a soccer team of 11 players. How many players are active most of the time, running here and there? Usually all 11 players on the field are active. In most of the game, if not all. And that is the difference between a church with small groups and a church of small groups. A church with small groups has a small number of people actively involved in the life of the church beyond attending on Sundays. And certainly many people may be in attendance on Sunday, but only a few are relatively involved the remainder of the week. The majority could be compared to spectators watching a ball game, interested but not on the playing field. But a church of small groups has a large number of people being actively involved in the life of the church, not just attending on Sundays. Rather than watching the ball game, so to speak, they are actively participating in the life of the church through their involvement as part of a small group. And that is why it is so important for us at Calvary Community Church to connect in this best way possible, which we believe is by becoming part of a small group. And if you would say with me one last time, community is best done in small groups. Now you may be thinking, that's a great idea, but how do you start or join a small group during COVID? Well, let's listen to this video explaining how this group of women from our church did just that.
I started a small group a few months ago during COVID. I noticed that COVID could be quite isolating, and I wanted to start a caring group that would truly reflect that we are all in this and the journey of life together. We have done most of our meetings on Zoom. Some were at the church and some outdoors. It is a space where we make room to listen to one another's stories, what God is teaching us, and what we are experiencing. Everyone is an equal contributor and participant. Prayer is a big part of our group. We give thanks to God for many answered prayers. We will often text each other asking for prayer during the week, and we have experienced support for one another. Recently, our group was able to support a group member through prayer as she went to hospital by ambulance. She said that after we started praying, she felt tremendous peace, whereas before she was panicking. The group has given us a place to be heard, to testify and to pray and to practice the priesthood of believers as revealed in Acts, where everyone brought something to share. It has helped us to thrive, not just survive.
So have you considered being part of a small group yet? And if so, how do you become part of a small group here at Calvary Community Church? Right now, as we take steps to become a church of small groups, we're needing to develop new small groups. So if you've previously led a small group and would be willing to join us on this exciting venture, do let us know. And if you're wanting to join in this venture by being in a small group, go to calvarycommunity.ca/groups to fill out a form with your details. When we receive your information, we'll get back to you with next steps in the process. And so as we've come to the end of today's presentation, may I ask you, how are you doing really? How are you doing really in your relationship with God? Is it your desire to know God, to grow closer to Him, to be part of His family, the church? If so, we're here to help you do that. And if you've not specifically asked God into your life, I would invite you to talk to God today, to pray this prayer with me if you wish, asking Him to come into your life and begin to change you so that you too may become part of His family, to become part of our family, the church. If you wish, say this after me. God, today I need you to come into my life because I can't do it any longer on my own. I need you and others who love you too. So please make me your child and part of your family, the church. I'm not sure how to begin, but I ask you, God, to do this so that I too can become your child and become part of your family. Amen. If you've prayed that prayer today, I would encourage you to text LIFE at 587-323-1199, and we will reply to you with next steps on your spiritual journey. Any questions, comments, etc. regarding today's sermon or any other matter, we would love to dialogue with you.
Thanks for joining us. If you need anything, don't hesitate to contact us. You can find more information on our website, on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Happy Mother's Day. We'll see you again soon.